And also, I believe it's streaming live on YouTube. So without that, we do have a quorum present, 5 members. So I would like to hear a motion to open the meeting.
Motion.
Motion.
Motion Pete, second.
Second.
In favor, we still do roll call, so Derek Yule.
Aye. Yule.
Hi, Steve O'Donnell.
Aye, Tom Reagan.
Aye, Joe Reese.
All right, so that's unanimous. The vote meeting is open. Right off for the only 2 things on the agenda, Doug actually has a presentation that he can give us that'll kind of clarify what we're here for and the reason that we're here for as pertaining to the article for the land purchase of the McCarthy farm property, and a couple things that have come up that need our attention. So Doug, when you're ready.
All right, thanks, Derek. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna, actually, before I share my screen, I'll just give the intro. The reason why we're here is we're talking about the proposed land acquisition of the McCarthy farm that we've previously talked about. You guys have already, voted on this to support $250,000 in total coming from the CPA toward the acquisition. As we've worked our way through getting the town meeting warrant articles finalized, when I went to the finance committee meeting with the town accountant, they did support the article and they do support the acquisition, but they expressed some concern about the financing recommendation that I have. And in particular, they're suggesting that we should look at using more Community Preservation Act funds and less other town general funds, be it stabilization or free cash, anything like that. And I would even go so far as to say they, express concern to the point where, someone might even make a revised motion on the floor of town meeting to adjust what we're proposing to essentially potentially use all CPA funding that's available. So we talked about that at the meeting, and the town accountant and I expressed our concerns with that and why we're recommending what we did. And we also reminded them that town meeting can only vote to appropriate CPA funds that you guys, this committee, votes to recommend. So you've only thus far voted to recommend spending $250,000 toward this acquisition. So town meeting really can't vote to appropriate anything more than that unless you guys take a vote tonight, to support that. So that's why we're here. I thought it'd be helpful to run through. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation that I plan on showing at town meeting, and most of it involves the financing of it. So I thought that'd be helpful to just give you a preview of that, and I think it lays out all the numbers pretty well. So with that, I'll share my screen. All right, and hopefully you can all see this okay. So it's not too long. This is just my outline. I have a brief summary of the project. I have a couple of maps to show where it is. We'll go over all the different financing options that we considered. Look at the state grant requirements, especially as it relates to the financing of the project, and then the recommended financing. So the summary of the project, and again, I know this is a little bit repetitive for you guys, but there's a little bit of new info from the last time we spoke. We're looking at over 36 acres of land. The address is 0 Beach Street. It's right across from the recycling center, and it was formerly known as the McCarthy Farm. And it's an important property. It's listed in the town's open space and recreation plan as a parcel that would be really beneficial to the town to acquire, because it's a large property, and it directly abuts and connects other open space and can help toward the Open Space Committee's vision of a green ribbon surrounding the perimeter of the town. We have this opportunity because the current owners of the property have a signed purchase and sale where they're looking to sell it to a private developer for a housing project. But since this was an active farm And they were using for many years the ability under Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, to get tax breaks because of their agricultural use. Whenever any entity takes advantage, I don't mean that negatively, but when they use the opportunity of having those tax breaks, whenever they look to change the use away from agriculture, they have to give the town the right of first refusal to potentially acquire the property. And so that's why we have this opportunity, the right of first refusal. And we're bound by the price in the purchase and sale. It's not something that we can negotiate. That's how this Mass General Law works. So the P&S price that the owners have with the developer is $900,000. So that's the price that we're looking at. We did get 2 independent professional appraisals done on the property. And the 2 appraisals averaged out to a little over $961,000. So you can see that the $900,000 figure is reasonable. And we obviously would never pay more than the appraised value, but we can certainly pay less. I'm going to talk to town meeting a little bit just about all the different boards and committees that are supporting this acquisition and this article: the Board of Selectmen, Open Space Committee, your committee here, the Community Preservation Committee, Conservation, Finance Committee, and it's also included on the Capital Planning Committee's capital plan. So it's got pretty wide support amongst all the different branches of town government. There we go. A couple of maps of the parcel. On the left, it shows kind of a zoomed in aerial view. You can see Beach Street here, the recycling center here. Here's the capped landfill. You'll see there's a couple of houses here. The town is not acquiring those parcels. We're only looking to acquire this large piece of open space here. You can see a pond and a couple of small little shed-like structures and things which would have to be removed if we do acquire it. And here on the right-hand side is a town zoning map, and you can see with a star and a big arrow just orienting people to exactly where the parcel is. So this, I think, is important for folks to understand all the different financing options that we considered when looking at potentially acquiring this property. So we're looking at grants, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute because we have already applied for a pretty substantial grant, which is integral to this whole article. So we are looking at a significant state grant. Another funding tool is a 1-year capital expenditure exclusion. So that's basically, think of that as like a little 1-year like mini debt exclusion. And I use the word debt in quotes because there's no debt involved. What that means is you vote at town meeting, and then voters would vote at the ballot to raise their taxes for 1 year and 1 year only to cover the entire cost of the acquisition. And then in the second year, the taxes go immediately back down to where they were before. So taxes go up 1 year, fully funded, and then they go back down. There's no borrowing, there's no debt, there's no interest. So we didn't want to pursue that at this point because we have other ways to fund it without raising taxes. The next option is a debt exclusion. We all know what that is. It's similar to the capital exclusion, except it's over multi-year periods, generally for much larger projects, tens of millions of dollars, like the elementary school project that we're doing. It involves interest and a debt schedule, and generally $900,000 is too small an amount to incur debt and interest and all the borrowing costs. We have free cash, which we're all aware of, but we took the time to put the word certified in here because you can only appropriate free cash once it's certified by the Department of Revenue, and we don't have that now in September. That certification comes later, generally, which is what we do in the annual town meeting or the special within the annual town meeting. So that's not an option in September. We have the Stabilization Fund. We all know what that is. That's our rainy day fund. And that is something that we're looking at temporarily using to fund this project at the special town meeting. And then we also have Community Preservation Act funds. I don't have to tell you guys what that is, but maybe I'll just highlight on the balances. The open space reserve balance is 47,400, and the undesignated fund balance, the remaining 70% that's not set aside in one of those 10% categories, is currently estimated at a little over $492,000. I've heard some questions from folks about, well, why don't we just fund this entirely from the CPA and borrow against our future CPA receipts? And that is allowable. Other towns have done that. I was involved with that in the last town I worked in. But again, that's generally done with larger projects that have larger costs. And it's also something I wouldn't recommend doing in Rockland now because we're so new to the CPA. We're not at the full 3%, and the debt service on that would really just eat up the revenues and restrict our ability to do any projects in the coming years. That's why we're not recommending borrowing against the CPA for this project. Talk a little bit about the requirements of the state grant. So we did apply for a state grant. It was very involved. It took a long time. A lot of people were involved with it, both in my office as well as a number of members of the Open Space Committee and the Conservation Commission. I want to thank everybody for it was a real team effort. The way that we have crafted our town meeting article is that it's contingent on getting approval of the state grant. So if we get the state grant and we get approval at town meeting, then we can move forward. But if we get approval at town meeting, but we get rejected by the state grant, our town meeting vote is null and void. So our town meeting vote is contingent on the grant, and the state allows that specifically in these grants. So that's okay to do. Another I should highlight as well that the grant amount that we applied for is the maximum, which is $400,000. A little quirk of the state of this particular grant is that the town is required to fully fund the entire cost of the acquisition at town meeting to be eligible for the grant, even though we're never going to actually spend that entire amount, again, because our vote is contingent on getting the grant. But it's a reimbursable grant. They require you have to fully fund it, and you get the grant, and then they pay you the grant amount. So even though town meeting is going to have to vote to appropriate $930,000, we're never ever going to actually spend $930,000 from town funds. And you can see in the box below, if we receive the grant, the total cost is $930,000, and I'll explain this extra $30,000 in the next slide. $930,000 less the $400,000 state grant means the net cost to the town is $530,000. If we don't get the grant, then we don't do anything. We don't proceed. So our recommended financing is as follows. We're banking on getting that $400,000 state grant. And what this committee voted to support when we presented this to you was a total of $250,000 in CPA funds, $45,000 from the Open Space Reserve, which is essentially all of it, and then $205,000 from that 490 something thousand that I mentioned earlier. From the undesignated fund, and then $250,000 from stabilization. And that totals the $900,000 purchase price. Now we added in an extra $30,000 that you'll see, and I highlighted what some of these contingency items are: recording fees, title certification, survey work, site work, etc. Now, many of these items could be eligible for additional state grants, which we would definitely pursue. But I want to have the authorization to cover these costs just in case we don't get these grants. Now, this next thing is really the key part of this whole discussion. You see the double footnote that I have on the stabilization fund numbers. And what I wrote at the bottom is, the town could, and I would say should, repay the stabilization fund amounts from what we anticipate would be certified free cash at our next annual town meeting in May. So it would be sort of a temporary use of stabilization fund, and then we'd repay it in May. Now, I can't promise that we'll do that because, town meeting has to vote to do that. And, I can't promise that we'll have sufficient certified free cash, but I believe we will have $280,000 in free cash to be able to do it. And I'll certainly recommend and recommend to the selectmen and the finance committee that we put it on the warrant to pay it back. But that's really sort of the key point of discussion with the finance committee and why we're here tonight. Is they're frankly just a little bit uncomfortable with that use of that $280,000 in stabilization fund. They'd rather take it all from the CPA. That's in their view. This is why we have CPA funds. It's dedicated for this, and we shouldn't use the rainy day fund. And I'll go through the presentation, and we can talk more about that point in a minute. But the concerns that the town accountant and I raised to the finance committee is that we're trying to be balanced here with this financing plan. Kind of a three-legged stool, the state grant, CPA funds, and then regular general funds, stabilization / free cash, sort of spreading it out. And our concern is that if we use up essentially all the CPA funding, we're putting ourselves at risk because if future revenues go down, we could be in the negative. And then also it just restricts your ability to approve any other projects, until years go by and you can replenish the funds. So we just don't think it's really prudent. A summary then, so this particular article is a little bit different from the other articles on our warrant because there's a long and complicated warrant article language that had to be approved by the state in order for us to be eligible for the grant. Our attorneys went back and forth with their attorneys and we couldn't change a word. And it's written differently than what we're used to. And one of the major differences is while it references different sources of funding, it doesn't spell out exactly how much from each source. So that will be delineated in a motion that's read at town meeting prior to discussion and then prior to the vote. So, we will draft that motion and then someone will read that motion at town meeting. And it's basically going to say what I've outlined here on the left-hand side, which is, move to appropriate 45,000 from CPA open space, 205,000 from CPA undesignated fund balance, and 680,000 from the stabilization fund to get to our 930,000 total. But as we look on the right-hand side, again, if we get the grant, what we'll actually spend is 400 from the grant, 250 from the CPA, and we'll actually only be spending 280,000 at a stabilization, which I would hope we'd replenish at the annual town meeting in May. We had a really good open forum, public forum a week or so ago that the Open Space Committee conducted, and we had really good attendance and got some good feedback from folks to really highlight, which I tried to do here, that this funding mechanism does not increase taxes. There's no tax increase associated with this. The CPA funds and our stabilization funds is already there. And then this is essentially the last slide. This was also based on some feedback that I got at the public forum about what are all the steps, what other types of votes and processes and hurdles do we have to finish this initiative. So we're looking at town meeting, which on the 13th, that's when the town meeting vote will be. Now, I mentioned earlier that this whole initiative is based on a purchase and sale agreement between the current owner and a developer who's looking to develop a residential project. So we're in discussions with that developer. They have reached out to us to look at possibly doing both things. Maybe they could, we would decline in their proposal. The town would decline our right of first refusal. They would acquire the entire 36 acres. They would keep just a small portion of that, just a few acres, and maybe one of those other parcels that has a house on it with a driveway, construct their whole development in a very condensed manner, and then gift to the town at no cost the remaining 30 plus acres. So there's a lot of details that would have to be discussed with something like that, and a lot of pros and cons. It's not so clear what would be in the best interest of the town. So we'll have those discussions concurrently to what we're doing now. Then later in the fall, October, November timeframe, the state will make their decision on the grant. Hopefully we get awarded the grant. And then by December 2nd, the Board of Selectmen will need to hold a public hearing to formally decide whether to exercise their option to purchase it or not. And that date of 12/2 is fixed because it's 120 days under state law from the date that we got the offer of the right of first refusal. So we could have that public hearing sooner, but it can't be any later than that. And then assuming that the town were to go ahead and exercise its right, we do a purchase and sale and then a closing. So that is essentially the presentation. When we get to town meeting, the Open Space Committee will follow up with their own perspectives, but I don't think we need that tonight because you already know why we're purchasing the property. So that is essentially the background. I could leave this slide up if you'd like, Derek, because it kind of summarizes the funding, or I can stop sharing if you'd rather have everybody's video larger. It's up to you.
No, I think that leaving it up is perfectly fine. It gives everybody a nice view there of what we're looking at. So essentially what we're trying to do tonight is discuss this as a committee that they very well could need, to get support to purchase this. They might need our approval to up that money to deal with a motion on the floor to change the 250 to something more.
Right. Right. And maybe I should have said, Derek, I don't mean to interrupt you, but maybe we should have the town accountant just give her explanation about the balance that's available and sort of why her recommendation is what it is. If you want, or you can get to her later. It's up to you.
Yep, she's absolutely, anybody who wants to talk. Biz, if you have something.
I,
If I may, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Biz.
Okay, I think it's important to point out the financial position of the CPA as we go forward with this. We have the option that we have on the table right now, so that should this be voted at town meeting, which we are fully anticipating that it will be at the recommended values, the close of the account for fiscal year 21 after 22, once we complete all this information, is going to leave you a balance of $287,427.73. So that is taking you down pretty low on your CPA balances, and it may tie your hands for future projects. Should the committee decide to increase the recommendation from the CPA funding, the maximum that I would recommend is a total funding of 300,000 from CPA, which would be the original 45,000 and then 255,000 from your CPA fund balance. That will give you an ending balance of 237,427.73. And just a little bit, education wise, I'm sure you guys know this, but for the public, CPA gets their funding through taxation, which is based on certain thresholds, but then you get your match from the state. Your match from the state fluctuates year to year based on refinances and selling of homes. So you just want to be careful to not put yourself in a negative revenue aspect next year, so you reduce your balance even more. So that's my recommendation. It is, of course, your committee, but I would use fiscal caution with what you want to do.
I totally, my opinion, I totally get the town side too, Biz, as far as stripping out $280,000 out of stabilization funds. I get where the finances come from for sure. And I agree with you on knocking us down, the CPA, not us, but the CPA committee. I see that too. So I don't know, anybody else got anything on it?
I mean, I think that you could,
The CPA, the balance in the stabilization fund might be helpful for you to also be aware of as well. Currently, we have 1,449,534.97. And if we take out the 280 as recommended, we would then have a balance of 1,169,534.
Mr.
Now-
Chairman,
yep. Joe?
thank you. Everyone has to keep in mind, we have 8 projects going on as of now. It was $1.something million, like Elizabeth just said. And a lot of this project, what I'm understanding right now, are going to come in a little bit higher than what we allocated money for those projects due to the cost of goods. So for us to bring this down our account is not being responsible. And I think the plan that originally was discussed is the proper way to go. It was well thought out. It went through the selectmen, finance, us, etc. I think we're better off leaving it alone and go with what everyone has adopted here. You don't run your checkbook down to zero or real low in your household, and we shouldn't do it neither. Thank you.
But it sounds like the finance did not agree with that on taking the 280 from the stabilization fund. Is that right, Biz?
Well, let me just say one thing, Biz, if I can jump in. You correct me if you disagree. They did vote to recommend and support this article. So, they are supporting the article and they do support the acquisition. But again, because the financing is going to be spelled out in the motion, I think it is likely, depending on what you guys vote, if you all vote no, not a penny more, then there won't be any changes on the floor of town meeting. But if you do vote to increase that to some amount, there could likely be a motion on the floor of town meeting to amend our motion and increase the stabilization amount. So again, it's not that they don't support it. They do support the article, but I think they just would prefer to see less stabilization and more CPA.
So, sorry, this is
Right.
John Hennessy, but so Doug, the question here is like the emotion or the drama you're talking about at town meeting. We're talking about the finance department. We're not talking about the actual town residents.
Well, it's the same thing. So, we're talking about members of the finance committee who are residents and who are voters. So they have just as much a right as anyone else to, it could be somebody else that makes the motion. I'm just assuming it would be a member of the finance committee, but it could be anybody who makes that motion. And then if it gets seconded, it gets discussed, and then, then that's what, could be voted on.
Derek, if I may, the clear aspect here is that the finance committee and anyone who's on the floor who wants to make a motion to change the funding, they can't change the CPA funding unless the CPA votes it. So you're the ones who are going to drive the funding for the CPA. So I don't know if that was clear or not, but that's the important part to realize here is you drive your funding from the CPA.
Yep. Now, and this is something, I mean, in the air of trying to get support for something like this at town meeting, I'm always a big fan personally of things kind of, like Doug had said, the three-legged stool, kind of splitting the burden over, equal things. I mean, there's the possibility that, we bump that figure up another 15 grand, and that makes it even money of what you're taking out of CPA and what you're taking out of stabilization. It doesn't really put us at a huge disadvantage. It would raise our contribution by $15,000. It would drop stabilization by $15,000. Something like that might be not a bad, good faith gesture. That, we do support this, but we are being fiscally responsible with our funds. They're fixed funds. This year or this past year, we got a very good match from the state. That might not happen next year. With the housing market right now, houses are being bought and sold very fast. But how long can that go? It's been like that for 3.5 years now. If that dries up, there goes one portion of our revenue stream. Obviously, the taxation, the surcharges will continue, but the kickbacks and the percentages from the state, like kickbacks, probably not a great word, but the
Contribution.
money and the contribution from the state, could drop. It's not huge amounts, but it's substantial on some of these projects that we're doing. These $30,000 and $40,000 projects could take a hit and take the back seat, if we don't have that money. But I mean, it's as far as discussions go, have everybody, air it out. We have this one basic chance right now. If we do want to change it, or if we don't want to change it, I'd like to hear all sides of it. I know, Doug, you've put together a great little thing here with all the people involved, accounting and legal representation and so forth. The open space committee's been huge with this. It would be a shame to not put our best foot forward and try to get this thing done as best of our ability. So I'd like to hear what everybody has to say.
Doug had mentioned something about if the company that's looking into buying it, if we passed it over, they would only require 6,000 acres and they would give us the rest of that. Is that kind of an option to look into, or is everybody totally against that?
Well, can I speak to that, Derek?
Yep.
So I'm going to go back to this next step chart here. So what we're doing is we're pursuing both things concurrently, both things at the same time. So I want us to be able to get a positive vote at town meeting that allows us to buy the entire property outright and get the grant. So we were able to acquire the entire property ourselves. I want that option. But at the same time, we are talking to this developer to see, what type of opportunities we have with, the development and getting most of the land for free. And then, ultimately it's up to the Board of Selectmen to decide that at their public hearing. And it's going to be a difficult decision, Peter, because, certainly having all of the property unencumbered without any development is certainly optimal for an open space perspective, right? But there's a cost to that. We're looking at, $500,000 coming from taxpayers in Rockland versus getting most of the property for free at no cost to the taxpayers. However, there'd be a housing development like kind of right in the middle of it, and it would kind of bifurcate the property. And then the housing development would have impacts on the community with water and sewer and police and fire and schools, et cetera. So it's not a simple answer, and that's why we're pursuing both paths in parallel. And then we'll have a few months to figure out which is ultimately in the best interest of the town. But let's just keep all our options open. That's how I would convey.
He's suggesting that we only get the swampland, not the highland, because that's what he's going to build on. So what's going to be left is wetlands, Pete.
Okay, no, I get it. I just kind of want to throw it out there again. That's all. I get the extra cost to the town on police and everything, but okay, no, I'm good.
Derek, Steve, I tend to agree with your assessment. If we were to up our funds to really truly make it a three-legged stool and balance our funding with the stabilization fund funding, I think that makes the most sense. I think that's, shows we're willing to play ball a little bit, keeps us in a good fiscal position. And really, I think emphasizes our approval in the town purchasing this land as a full tract of land.
I agree with that, Steve.
Yep. I think anytime that you have the option or the ability to take full control out of, of a parcel of property and object, I think we're better off. I think that, business dealings and the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So the intentions of the builder might be to include and be inclusive toward the town, but the bottom line is it's a business that has to be run, and it's got to be fiscally responsible for that developer as well. And if that means that the uplands and the driest of areas, easiest of access is what's being developed, it does kind of leave that land as kind of questionable whether or not you get access to it without going through another property or such. So I think getting the whole parcel should be the prime, target. And I mean, looking at it right now, the only part of our thing that would really need a vote or anything would be to increase our grant total from 250 to 265,000, 45 being from open space reserve, and 220 being from the undesignated preservation fund. It's just an increase of 15,000, and that would then allow Doug, you could take that 15,000 off of the stabilization.
Yeah, I think that's a I hadn't thought of it. I think it's a great idea. It's reasonable. It's it's affordable, and like you said, it puts it in balance. I don't know if it'll satisfy everybody, but I think it's a good faith. I think it's a good idea. And I see Biz is nodding her head. I think she agrees because it's affordable. So I think we're good.
All right. So
So this is John again. I mean, I just want to point out that, I get this project. I'm in full support of this project. I'm not getting this math. So, basically the issue with using stabilization fund money with a bigger account and even paying it back, I'm still not getting the issue with the finance committee on that. And I probably may not get that. So to me, like I said, I wouldn't want a project to not be done because of $15,000 or $50,000. However, we shouldn't be having that burden on our side. That's what I'm not getting here. So I just wanted to say that. I want to, just let people know that's what I'm thinking here. My other question, just Doug, are you showing the slide at the meeting or a couple of these slides?
Oh, yes, I was going to show this entire PowerPoint
Oh,
presentation
okay.
at town meeting. Yeah.
Great.
And if I can just say, John, to answer your point, I think the finance committee's perspective is the stabilization fund or free cash, should be a last resort, should be an absolute last resort for anything. And that, the whole reason why we have the CPA is for, historic preservation, affordable housing, open space and recreation. Like this is why we did it, so I think in their mind, use it all for this. And yeah, that's tough that we'd be using all of it, but we'll slowly over time start replenishing it. It's it's a recurring source. There's a revenue stream from it. So it's just a kind of a different philosophy, because I think they're just worrying about we say we'll pay it back. Will we really do it? Things can change. That's sort of where they're coming from. But I just thought
Sure, and I get that, but I would probably argue the exact same thing about the finance committee and their budget.
I was gonna
That's
say the
going to
same
be
thing, John.
replenished. It's going to be moved around again. We write things off every town meeting. We move money all the time. So, I mean, I guess I'm probably not on that side of believing that, but that's just I'm not fully, I don't know everything about the finance committee, but that would just be my 2 cents.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
question for Doug and Liz. If we run out of money for the $1 million of projects that are out there, how is the funding gonna help complete these projects that we already approved?
Mr. Chair, can the speaker identify themselves?
Joe Reese.
Joe Reese. Okay. Hi, Joe. Okay. If you repeat the question, Joe, and I'll let Doug go on it.
The question is, if we run out of funds for the $1 million of projects that we have out there now, with materials going higher, which I've already been spoken to by a couple of people that are running projects, that they're expecting increases of material cost. They're probably going to be coming back to us for more funding. So if we run out of money and we still have balances out there, where are we going to get the money to pay for that?
You will have to take that from your CPA funds, essentially. Either
it's all-
probably your fund balance or whatever the original project was, you'd have to continue funding through that avenue.
Yeah, but if the money's gone and the checkbook's empty, how are we going to pay for those projects that are going forward now?
We would have to either A, stop the projects, or B, it would have to come from the, it would be a deficit on the town's free cash and the recap, which you do not want to do.
Joe, let me add this to what Biz said. Obviously, what she said is correct, but just to give you a little bit more, when she's giving our estimate for how much CPA funding is available, she's already taken out of that everything that's already been appropriated for outstanding projects. So any projects we've approved, she's already set that money aside. And that's all. But your point is why we are talking about why we're recommending don't spend every penny. We should have a little bit of a cushion in there. And then the last thing I'd say is if any project goes over, they cannot spend more than what we've appropriated. So I think you may have said they'll have to come back, and they would. They'd have to come back and seek another application, another article at town meeting, because they can't spend more than what was appropriated.
Correct.
in most cases as well, in every case, when writing the articles, I always put in an extra 10% immediately right on top of it. So everything we've approved is actually already starting 10% higher than what the original estimates were.
But if it goes higher than that 10%, that's what I'm asking. And
yeah, it's got to come back and be approved, and we can only approve something we have funding for.
Correct. So a
we can put a halt.
project's been started, and now the funds are gone and they need more money to complete the project, and we have nothing to help them out with.
Yeah, that's 100% why I don't think we run this down to nothing, and that's what we've
Mhm.
discussed. If we miss the mark by $15,000 and some of these projects have to go, I think that things would have to go pretty sideways.
Mm.
I agree.
So,
I don't think it could go up that much. If business already figured this into it, and we had, like Derek said, the 10% on top of it,
Mhm.
buffer, I don't think, I mean, yeah, I know cost of wood and everything else has gone up, and gonna still go up, but I don't think it's gonna go that far out of reach.
You never know.
So I know.
but I think that we can make a best educated guess. And in a case
Mhm.
like this, I think, the people that are doing this stuff for a living, Elizabeth and Doug, I think you guys have a pretty good finger on the pulse of what the right thing to do is. And I guess from this committee, I look to you guys and, for your opinion, what do you think? Do you think that splitting it even with stabilization's the way to go?
I do want to mention, Derek, you just kind of called out, we normally do add a 10% contingency to funding projects. This is one that we didn't. We funded it as asked. And so if we were to add the 10% contingency like we normally do, that would be another 25,000. So I think 15 makes a lot of sense in this case, knowing that it's a high dollar amount. And again, balancing it, really, we're splitting that contingency fees with stabilization. So we're both would be putting in 265 at that point, but the rest coming from the grant. I think that makes the most sense, and it doesn't hurt us really at all.
Mhm. I would agree with that position.
Excellent, thank you. So our point here would be to get this thing wrapped up. Basically to hear a motion for an increase of $15,000, bringing our total obligation to $265,000 for the contingent purchase of McCarthy Farm.
I will make that
Derek.
motion, Derek.
All right, Peter is making the motion to increase to 265.
15,000.
And we'll do a roll call vote after we get a second, if we can get a second. Second, Steve O'Donnell. So why don't we do a roll call vote? I know the screen's all kind of wonky for everybody here. It just readjusted again. Joe Reese.
Come back to me.
Okay. Tom Reagan.
IP.
Aye.
All right, and that was Peter.
Yep. PDUI.
All right. Charlie Williams.
I'm sorry for my late arrival. I just have one question. And you've probably already covered this, and I apologize for that. So with the acquisition of this property, does it remain only for open space, or will the town have some right to develop portions of it if they need to?
Yeah, I can answer that, Charlie. Good question. And I should add that to the PowerPoint. I'm glad you brought that up. No, it cannot be developed. Especially as we're pursuing a state grant, there's very strict requirements that it be permanently restricted as open space. So and that's part of the grant application, our actual draft conservation restrictions. So it would be permanently restricted, could not be developed if the town were to acquire it.
Okay.
All right, so to continue, we do need we had the second from Stephen, so Tom, Peter are both yes votes. Steve O'Donnell.
Aye.
Steve O'Donnell. John Hennessy.
I'm gonna go against this one.
Okay.
And my main point is it really should be a finance issue. It should not come back to us.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Charlie Williams.
boy, that's a big one. Everyone's voted.
I haven't.
Nope, Joe has.
Okay.
And I only need to vote if there's an issue.
Suspense is killing me right now.
I know, I'm sorry. I just don't,
I'm a little upset that finance came back to us with this, and for $15,000. It's a little
They asked for a
insulting.
lot more, Joe.
No, Joe, just to be clear,
That is
they were not asking for 15, they're asking for, everything.
I think
little-
it's a good faith gesture from the committee, to level it off. I think it makes it look a little better.
I understand all that, but this is the last hour. The warrants are being printed. Everybody's signed off on this project, and for them to come back with something like this, it's a little insulting to me.
All right. So as you stand, 2 out have not voted. As of right now, we have 3 yeses, 1 no.
Joe Reese is going to be a no.
All right.
so explain to me, Derek, what our options are. If this-
Our options, we can leave it just the way it's already been written. The article was written with us giving 45 from Open Space Fund and then 205 from the general fund for a total of $250,000. 280 from stabilization to cover the extra costs as well. 400 from a grant. My suggestion, they were looking for basically are questioning why we weren't footing the bill for the whole thing. It would deplete everything we have and then some.
Right,
So my suggestion was to just, as a good faith gesture, just kind of pop in an extra 15 that makes stabilization's contribution equal, or the free cash stabilization equal to what our contribution would be. And then the balance coming in the way of a state grant. This whole thing's all contingent on getting the grant. If we get denied, then nothing happens. And then we got to pursue a different avenue if time is on our side. But
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Open space is on our committee, on our meeting, correct?
yes, they are.
We haven't heard anything from them, how they feel about this. They're the ones that did most of the legwork. I would rescind my.
There's a motion on the floor we have to vote on.
Yeah.
Pardon?
There's a motion on the floor and we have to vote on it before we can continue discussion.
Can I just make one comment, Derek? Just relating to your vote and just getting to Joe's point. The Open Space Committee's main driver here is to, help with the grant, help us pursue acquiring the property. But when it comes to, how to finance it, that's really more the role of this committee, the town accountant, me, the finance committee. The financing is really, they want to see this property, acquired. That's where they're coming from. And they also, while there might be 1 or 2 individuals on here, they didn't post it as an open space committee meeting. So I think you're better off just taking your vote.
Thank you.
All right.
so there's no further discussion on this?
With a motion on the floor for a vote, it would be out of order. Now, would something like that would almost have to put a halt to it, have executive session for a discussion? I mean, Doug,
It wouldn't be executive session, but I suppose if you end up getting deadlocked, say 3-3, right, with one abstention, then I suppose, you could open up discussion again because, that action would have failed and then you could have a new motion. But I'd encourage you to vote. I think you guys should, vote and go with it, whichever way you decide.
well, that would be it.
So where we at? Deadlock?
No, right now we have 3 yeas, 2 nays. Charlie needs to vote. And then if it's another nay, then Derek would vote. Otherwise, Charlie abstains and votes yay, passes.
Derek, may I make one other observation? If you don't mind? I'm just trying to help facilitate. To be honest, I think you might be making a bigger deal out of this vote than it is because we're only talking about $15,000, which the town accountant and I feel comfortable with that you can absorb. But to be honest, I don't think $15,000 is really going to change the mind of the finance committee. So I don't think it's a big deal either way, whether you vote to yes on the 15 or you vote no. I don't think it's really going to make or break what we're, the success of the project. That's my personal opinion.
Okay. So either way,
So just so I'm clear on this, because I want to make an informed decision. The vote, can you tell me the vote again? I'm sorry.
the motion was to vote on increasing our contribution for the purchase of the farm by $15,000 from $250 to $265.
Okay.
That way it would equal the stabilization's contribution or free cash's contribution.
Charlie, I can help you out. I'm gonna rescind my vote and vote yes.
So just so I'm clear on this, the vote is to increase. So the vote has already been taken to purchase the property. Is that correct?
Yes, we've already written the article. Everything's already been done with that.
Okay. Then I'm a yay, I guess.
Okay. So with, is there anything that Joe actually has to do beyond what he just said to formally rescind his vote and change it before it's been called?
I don't know. I don't think it's necessary though, because Charlie just voted yes. So I think
Yeah, exactly.
let's keep it simple, guys. Leave Joe's vote alone. I think Charlie voted yes. I think you got enough votes.
Yep, we actually do. That's not a problem. So even with 2 no's, it's 4-2 without my inclusion. So it is a yes vote, and we will increase our contribution for the McCarthy farm by $15,000 to $265,000.
So maybe I should have clarified this before, but my intention, the way I was bringing this to you was this would be in reaction to a motion on the floor to amend our proposal. We're not changing our actual proposal. So if there's a motion on the floor to amend it, then we can say we can go up an additional 15, but I'm not changing out of the gate. So I make sure we're all
Not changing the original article
Good.
unless it gets drawn for a motion on the floor.
We're on the same page. Yep.
Absolutely. Very good. So with that item pretty much knocked off the agenda, the next thing would just be ongoing and current projects. If anybody has anything to update with ongoing projects.
I talked to Dave Taylor, Jim Paul. I haven't talked to Charlie. Charlie, how's the King Phillips going? Are you going to be under budget or at budget?
We've had a little bit of a snafu with that in the fact that the gentleman that's doing the project has asked us to hold off on getting it to him for a little bit longer, as he is moving some other projects out. I communicate with him on a regular basis to make sure that that continues to move forward. But at this point, I thought it's not there. It assures me that he will have room for it by the end of September. So that is where that stands. I spoke with Dave Taylor today also. The crosswalk project is moving forward. Union Square was completed today or yesterday. They are going to begin Liberty Street and Plain Street within the next 2 weeks. So like I say, Union Square was complete. All of those signals were upgraded, and the timing was changed. Dave still has some work to do, crosswalks. He's going to take care of that. But
Charlie.
the physical, yes.
You're breaking up. Having trouble
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
All right, let me. I don't know. I'm on my Wi-Fi. I don't know why it's breaking up.
You're
You're
good
going
right
in
now.
and out.
Okay, so did you get the part about King Philip? So currently it is still here. It needs to go to Maine. The gentleman that's doing the project had to finish up some other projects before he could start King Philip. So that is here. He assures me that it should be going there probably by the end of September, beginning of October. Are we good with that?
Yes.
Okay. In regards to the crosswalk project, so Union Square was complete. I believe it was completed yesterday or today. So all the signals have been changed. The timing has been changed. Dave Taylor has some work to do in the actual intersection. He's going to do that. The other intersection, Liberty Street, they're going to start construction on Liberty Street and Plain Street within the next 2 weeks. One of the things that I hadn't brought the board up to date because I just found out is that the equipment to do this, of course, with everything and supply chain issues, has gone up quite a bit. So it looks like we're going to only have enough funding to do Plain Street and Liberty Street in Union Square. And Dave and I had talked about possibly coming back this year to finish up those last intersections so that the whole rail trail system had the crosswalk protection. So that's the plan. That's where we stand with it right now.
So
Okay,
you
so the
call,
only remaining spot would be Howard Street, really, right?
Yeah, so you'd have Howard Street and Vernon Street. So you'd have Howard and Vernon that needs to be taken care of. Liberty Street by the police station will be taken care of. So then, yeah, you'd have Howard and Vernon, or Vernon and Howard. Union Square is taken care of, and then Plain Street will be taken care of.
yeah, those are the three big ones. Union
Right.
Street.
So because of the cost of the equipment went through the roof, we chose to do those three big ones as the most important for right now. And like Dave and I kind of talked about, it'll give us a chance to kind of acid test that equipment to make sure that it's going to do what we want it to do. And then, like I say, this year, we'll try to go back and see about getting the other two crosswalks done.
Excellent. Excellent. So as far as other projects that are either underway or have not been taken yet, I know last time we discussed the Remembrance Park at Town Hall. And also the hardscape and basically redesigning of the siding next to Dunkin' Donuts at Union Square. And those were a couple things that they were coming pretty close to getting underway. We'll have to reach out to Dave as the signer of those couple projects and see how they're moving along or when they're gonna start and get underway.
He's going to start the town hall this month. The Union Square, he really didn't tell me he was still working on some other issues with the surveyor. Jim Paul, he's working on the tramp house, trying to get a hold of this woman. So he's hoping to get that started. And he had mentioned possibly some increases in materials at the GR hall because of the cost of materials.
Yep, understandable. And with anything, any of these projects that are close, I mean, I know, like I said, most of what we have done with the funding for these, we built in the 10%. We did not do the 10% with any, the land purchases and such, because it's a fixed price agreement. But anything that was based in a commodities market, whether it's steel, wood, anything of that sort, hardscape, rock, we always built in that extra 10%. So hopefully that'll absorb some of it. I know in my industry, material costs have gotten to the point where they're a little bit over doubled what they were as of last November.
Look at the light. Look at the light project. We're going to be cutting out 2 areas
Yeah, steel
out
prices.
of that project.
It's unfortunate, but right now steel prices are double what they were a year ago. It is what it is. It's something we'll have to deal with and make judgment calls. There might be some projects that get more than others, and it would be up to the committee to deem what's important, and what we might be able to stave off until we've replenished our funds.
Yeah, it's the way it's going to have to be.
Yeah, it's like anything, we're gonna have to operate inside that, a budget like anybody else, so.
But I
Any
was concerned about these projects going forward. That's why I was pretty upset with finance asking for more money when we're trying to accomplish some things that voters already voted on, and now we're losing two areas of the rail trail, not having that crosswalk lighting. So, these are the things that we run into with projects, and unfortunately, no one's got a crystal ball to see what's going to happen in the future.
This is the truth, Joe. It's unfortunate. I mean, I see their standpoint from it, looking from the outside, looking in, this is probably looks at say, hey, this is exactly what CPA is supposed to do. But like any other department, we've got to be somewhat responsible with that money. We can't run out of it with so many open projects. So are there any other updates, points of discussion for the projects going on?
Derek, just a question. So we should be starting to see projects for this year coming in fairly soon, correct?
Yes, we give everybody through till the last day in October to have projects put in. I expect probably one that I almost guarantee is going to come in, and it's going to be obviously from Dave for the connection, as we've talked about it before. We tabled it last time. That's going to have some issues on whether or not it's even allowable under state law to use the funds for that project or aspects of that project. I have not received any word back from a couple of the other ones that were pending and kind of up in the air. One being the Copley Gardens project, but I do know that things were being adjusted with that one to streamline the proposal and possibly get it to within the realm of what is, or the scope of what is doable with CPA funds, as in within the past. I mean, a lot of these things hopefully we'll get a few good projects come in. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm all for letting the people vote on everything if it makes sense, you know, I don't want to be somebody telling somebody no unless it's just a legal obligation to tell them no. Right.
I would, I really, I want to look at that Copley Gardens project pretty closely.
Yep.
I have some concerns about that. So I definitely want to, if and when you see that, you know, we can get that up.
It might not even be done. It might not even be done for this year. You know, she was,
Okay.
they were basically, their whole thing was that the project was going forward with or without our money. It would just be another revenue stream that would have, you know, allowed them to do something else, you know.
Okay.
It's neither here nor there. We haven't, you know, we haven't received any further correspondence on that as far as I know. So
What
Okay.
did Stuart get back to you on any of the issues of that proposal?
well, there's definitely a bunch of that proposal that's can't be touched. But creating more units is a viable option. You know, if they're going to create more units of affordable housing, which helps out the town's percentage, because as Doug was saying last meeting, we're still way below that percentage got set forth by the state. That is admissible if
Yep.
it's creating new units, and especially affordable.
Yeah. That was one of my concerns, them
Yeah.
upping more units for affordable housing.
Yep, and once we get any of these proposals in, whether it's that one or there was another one that somebody had brought up about one of the condos at the end of Union Street, the Market Street end. There's a condo unit there. They were questioning some things about community housing. Basically all of those things will be forwarded straight through to the coalition to get the rubber stamp on. We don't want to take any missteps or go in the wrong direction with any of these things.
Is that the one that put in an application a couple of years ago for windows and fire escape?
It was the fire escape, yeah, which obviously wasn't within the scope. So it was an in passing conversation with somebody that said, you know, they were hoping to get something put in. But aside from that, yeah, it's coming close. We've got a few things that we do need to do on the bookkeeping end of things. And we also have a couple of things to take care of that we're obligated to do. We have an open public forum that we have to do. That should be in October. That's
Where
and
where are we at with help with all the applications, questions that you brought up at one of the meetings that you don't have?
as far as
Fielding
it wasn't.
questions from the community on what they can do with their application and stuff. I thought we were looking into a assistant to help out with that.
We discussed it. That would be something that basically would have to write our own article about to appropriate money for that out of the administration account. And it would also be something that I think that would probably want to involve Doug with to a large extent to find somebody or maybe have a path for us to follow for somebody that can take care of some of this, especially as some of these projects start adding up. You know, somebody to keep a close eye on it, wrangle them, you know, so to speak. But we definitely will have to put that on our agenda articles for the next meeting to really get in depth. And with that, we can reach out. Any one of you can reach out to either Stewart or Chase Mack with the coalition to find out, you know, what some other towns have done for an administrative assistant or a part-time bookkeeper / secretary / you know.
Derek, can I make a comment on that point?
Absolutely.
What I think other towns generally do is they just increase the amount of money that is set aside for the administrative purposes. So you just increase that number to, something larger, and that's just one of the allowable uses. So I don't believe you need a whole separate article for that. So other towns might appropriate, make up a number, say $75,000 a year. A good chunk of that is for the normal administrative stuff, surveys, appraisals, that kind of stuff. And then a good portion of that is for a part-time or full-time, they generally will call it a coordinator, a community preservation committee coordinator. And then, they would be the intake for, when groups have questions about applications. And then they'd also do all the follow-up, kind of like the discussion you guys are just having now. So individual committee members aren't having to track down things, that would be the role of that person. I'm happy to share with you what a couple of other towns do, but I think it would just be a matter of increasing the administrative funds amount.
Now, would it be admissible, and this is something that we've discussed as well, for a current and already present part-time town employee?
Like as a stipend or something, you mean? Yeah, some towns do that for sure. That's something we could talk about.
All right.
Depending on who has the capacity and all that, and whether they're in a union or not, we'd have to look at the union agreements. But I know that other towns do that. They'll pay a stipend for those additional tasks.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right. So that will definitely, I'm going to put that down as a mark for the next agenda.
So in the meantime, we've changed the auto response to the email for anyone that sends anything in, and anything that requires a little bit more detailed response. Typically looping Derek in with the response to the person submitting it, advising that we'll add it to the next agenda, and then giving them the scheduled date.
Excellent. So is there anything else going forward, or?
I do have a couple of things, Derek. Some emails we did get. Rockland Cares reached out to us regarding information about the Reed's Pond project. And they're looking to, if we were to acquire it, I know that's kind of still in discussion, but they're interested in adding essentially an overdose awareness memorial down at Reed's Pond, if the town were to acquire it. Just a place to reflect. Sorry about that. The other one was, we did get, I think, Tom, you may have sent that over to us, the CP3 project list deadline. Is September 15th. Derek, I don't know what you normally.
Normally, that's something that is handled through the accountant's office. They've taken care of that the past handful of years now, filling it out and submitting it. So with that, I believe last time and actually Biz could probably answer it better than me if she's still available.
Hold on. I am still here. And which form was that? The CP3?
Yes.
That's already been filled out. It was submitted today. I will email that over to you so you have it for the record.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, because I know that last time we didn't touch any of that. We got it. I think I got an email of it, forwarded back to the accountant's office the first year.
Mhm.
And since then, we haven't had to do anything. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All set. I'll email that to you tomorrow.
Excellent. Excellent. Steve, anything else?
Those are the only two items. I'm going to write back, if you guys are all right with it, to Rockland Care, saying that we have not acquired the Reed's Pond property. Although, folks are looking at opportunities or something along those lines.
Derek, can I give you a very brief update on that, on the Reed's Pond property?
Yep.
So that one's dragged on quite a bit, and the main reason is because the cemetery, the Spring Lake Cemetery, does not appear to have their paperwork in order as far as the corporation and all that. So it's a little bit more challenging to figure out how to make how to get this done. So I do have a meeting now scheduled on the books with our land use attorney and the person who's identified themselves as the representative of the cemetery to try to figure out a path forward. But that's what's holding that up is just the things have been kind of carried on from parent to child over the years as they've, maintained the cemetery. But we're having difficulty finding all the paperwork. So it's just taking some time.
Excellent. Thank you, Doug. Any other items of discussion for past or current projects?
I have one other thing. It's not a project related item, so if you want to wait till the end, I can bring it back up.
I think we are set with that item from the agenda. So what do you got to say, Charlie?
I know that we're having an issue with your availability as well as mine and whatnot. Do we want to try to pick a different night so that we can take care of that once and for all?
Absolutely. I am open to pretty much anything. Thursdays are definitely out for me, but any other night is schedulable.
Okay. I mean, just as long as it doesn't conflict with planning board or another meeting I have on a Wednesday night. So.
Right. I do know that there was, Stephen, you had a couple nights that just didn't work out with you and Joe, I think.
How about this? I can maybe send a doodle to the board tomorrow, and we can get a sense of what night works better for who and when. Does that work?
It would. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's something that we want to throw across channels though. That would be deemed in violation of any open meeting laws where we're actually discussing committee business as a group outside of it. Doug?
Yeah, I would, to be honest, Derek, if you're only talking about scheduling a date of a meeting, you're fine. You're not deliberating on any substance. You're just scheduling a date. That's totally fine to communicate this.
All right, I want to make 100% sure we're doing things the right way.
Yep, no, that's fine.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree. As long as it's not going to violate the meeting law or anything like that. I mean, like I said, it would just be a link saying what nights work better.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, so if there is no further discussions to be had or any input from anybody, I see a few people that are still here from other committees or whatnot. If there's no questions or comments, the floor is open to any guests.
Make the motion to close the meeting.
Second.
Motion has been made to adjourn the meeting and it has been seconded by Steve. Roll call vote to adjourn the meeting. Tom?
Peter, aye.
Tom Reagan, aye.
Peter. Aye. Stephen?
Aye.
Charlie?
Charlie Williams, yes.
Joe Reese?
Well, do we lose?
No, he said it. He's just on mute.
Yeah.
John Hennessy, aye.
Thank you, John.
Joe Reese in favor, sorry.
And Derek as well. Derek Yule. So the meeting is adjourned at 8:50 p.m. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
Great night.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Biz.
Aye. Yeah, thanks, Doug and Biz.
Thank you very much.
How do you close out?